Hello, and welcome to this perfectly innocent stream that's running very smoothly. On an unrelated note, it was like super funny to hop into this stream that I had genuinely, non-sarcastically prepared ahead of time. I created both the streams at like 9:30 this morning. So I like hop onto the stream and I'm like, no one's in here yet. That's so funny. I'm like a minute late. I didn't send or post links in either of the places that I was supposed to post links. So in that sense, it was indeed a scramble. And you know what's funny about getting medicated finally? You start learning how long it actually takes you to do things. So the next time I have to record a video in which I give my final thoughts on a series that I've just finished reacting to, I'll give myself more than half an hour so that I have plenty of time to do my usual, sit down and brush up on whatever intense, awful, horrible, torturous sadness Meat Bun has unleashed upon me in the past couple days. Didn't have time to do that as a result, but it's a process. We're learning how, now that I can do things, we're learning how to do them at the appropriate times and in the appropriate way. So I am scattered in the brain, given, how I had to scramble to get the link up to you guys. So somebody have the lovely job of reminding me most things that happened. He was put in a cage. I remember this well. Actually tortured by the size of the cage, now that I think about it. Literally, I've entirely blanked. I went into such a, oh my God, I didn't post the link panic that it has now entirely wiped. I had a decent handle on it this morning as I was making the streams. It was fine. And then now the ADHD, the false accusation. Thank you, Ninin. Thanks. Yeah. It's the false accusation. And we had just, the end of the last chapter was about kind of the genesis isn't quite the word that I'm looking for. It was the birth of Taishanjin, for lack of a better phrase. It was really the moment that brought about everything that came after, that I think made him vulnerable to that fucking flower's influence. Although with a flower that powerful, it could basically take, like, Mr. Rogers and make him a violent, seething criminal. But it helps if there's a little bit of trauma to push to get you started. And this was his. And understandably so. Jiangxi being the surprise hero of the hour, that was indeed a surprise. Saying everything that we were thinking. Bless him. That was a small but much needed bit of catharsis. And it's hard to judge when you're looking at an expositional story in which everything awful happens to this main character. And you really have to pick and choose when you lighten the load. And you don't have to do it very much, as we've seen, because Meat Bun didn't really do it all that much. But she still gave us little tiny things to hang our hats on. Madame Mo being the absolute fucking worst. Thank you again, Ninin. And we still hadn't gotten the answer on... It's the what happens next. It's with the way the previous chapter ended. with, you know, Tae Shan-joon being, you know, born essentially, we still didn't get how exactly he takes over that piece of shit's life to go and then wind up on Seashung Peak. We've gotten closer. We're getting a lot of really important, if not heinous, context. But we still don't have the answer. Maddie, how does that brothel end up burned down, and how does Moran end up in this guy's place? The brothel getting burned down, yeah, that's another thing that we still haven't gotten to. Which feels wild to say, because just so, oh, we got the explanation of, I was gonna say so much has been explained, like the reason incense, the whole incense thing. One of those things that in hindsight you were like, yeah, she made just enough of a deal about that it should have flagged something. I should have had a red flag about that there was something more to that, and not just, it's one of Mo-run's preferences and isn't Ju-woning fantastic for being so thoughtful. No, of course there was more. Of course. The coat! Thank you, Maria. The coat. If you allow me to torture a metaphor, the idea of having Ju-woning give him his coat really speaks to the way in which that kindness was so fundamental to Mo-run's psyche. Because it stays with him. It's like that and his mom are like the two good things that stay with him. And so it's very appropriate that she didn't just have Ju-woning feed him and help him in that way, but that there was something in that he gave him that Mo-run literally carried afterward until he couldn't possibly anymore. And speaking of which, there's a whole ass rant in there about making him burn that fucking coat. You're taking a destitute, sickly, emaciated child in off the streets, and they have something, I do not care what it is, that they are clearly attached to and clinging to and don't want to get rid of. You keep it. I don't care who the fuck you are. You keep it. You could be an emperor. And you're like, this is the shittiest piece of crap that's ever existed. I don't fucking care. Kid's been through enough. Let him keep like his one anchor. It's taking someone's security blanket away from them, literally. Don't do that. That's shitty. Because the thing about kids is that they grow up to be people. And in this case, and a lot of extenuating circumstances, they grow up to be evil, tyrannical emperors. Let him keep the coat. Oh, Maria, but he wasn't given a choice. No, I remember that. But the context around it is eluding me. He wasn't given a choice. Somebody else was, though, and that was part of the devastation. Was that you were able to connect the dots about someone else having some kind of choice. He wasn't given the choice to keep the coat, love. Yes, thank you. But wasn't there something else that he had no choice in? As Love says, because he was poor. A lot of it was a poor thing. The flower, I mean, yeah. Maddie, nothing ever, honestly. And that's fairly true. Blue says villains keep saying that they didn't have a choice, and then we have Mo-run, who wasn't even given the choice to stay dead after he decided that he was done. villains do have that thing where they say that they didn't have a choice. And there's plenty of aspects before we even get to the flower that we have just learned about in which Mo-Run didn't have a choice. But that did not naturally turn him into a villain. Anyone else loving Mo-Run just a little bit more than they did 5 seconds ago? Or is that maybe just me? Oh, love. Tisha and June said beggars can't be choosers when he burned Ru Feng sect in the OG timeline. And that's what his dad had said to him when he went to ask him for something for his mom's quote. No, that's right. This is why a reread is going to be so devastating. Like every 5 seconds, I'm running into something that just illustrates even more that rereads are brutal in a different way. And what kind of fucked up sadistic writer you gotta be to create something that is arguably just as devastating on second read, just in a different way. Who does that? Yeah, see? The rereaders are confirming this for me. Thank you. Henry, yes, volume 10 has just come out. It may have been a few days. But volume 10 is just out. Volume 11 comes out, I think, in March. And so we'll be starting to read volume 10 somewhere in February. Maybe it was late February. Ooh, wait, there's a piece of a conversation I need to catch up on. Oh, Liv, can we talk about how that Mo kid could have been in Xishang Peak next to Chu Wanning, Shui Meng, and Shui Zhengyang? There's an awful thought. Thanks. Jesus. What would that even look like? I feel like Shui Zhengyang would, just throw him off the peak at the steepest place fairly early on. Because it's not that fuckhead was like a genius or anything. He's just an opportunist. A problem came along, which was a witness to his heinous crime, and he was like, oh, blame it on him. That's not particularly clever. So I feel like, yeah, between Chu Wanning and Shui Jingyoung, dust he would have been. Oh, yeah, Maddie, that's a good point. Chu Wanning wouldn't have taken him, obviously. He'd be someone else's disciple. Would he be anyone's disciple? I don't know. Is there like a particularly shitty Shizun on Xishang Peak? I wouldn't wish that disciple on fucking anybody. Maddie, maybe that asshole medicine one who hates Chu Wanning. Yeah, him maybe. That's true. Forget his name, but I know who you're talking about. That would be a good possibility. Oh, Cosmic Catloaf. Great name, by the way. Also said Xuanji Elder, probably because he takes in anyone, but he's not shitty. True. So he could have gotten like taken in, but probably wouldn't have lasted long. Again, not with the kind of, sadistic hell and torment that he likes to unleash on people. Yeah, Love mentions the whole referring to oh, I know her name. I know her initials. Yihan, Duan Yihan. They did refer to her as a goddess and then ditch her basically. And there's been like one or two other things with goddesses, or am I inventing things? Is there like a goddess through line that actually exists, or am I just making that up? There's also a conversation about food going on, evidently. Blue says you just know that Chu Wanning would have whipped him on the daily, Shizun or not. Yeah. Which is why I say between Chu Wanning and Shui Jingyang, he would not have been long for Xisheng Peak, one way or another. Not even remotely. Which, on one hand, you kind of want to see, just because, you want to see him appropriately punished. But then again, he did end up dead. I would need a pretty satisfying death scene to happen on the page, though. So maybe we'll get that today. That'd be nice. Because there's usually some form of reward from, well, Dan May authors in general, but Meat Bun is totally one of those people. We got like a volume and a half of, the farm and just wonderful romantic gorgeousness for a good long time after those opening initial volumes. So I'm kind of low-key expecting a very satisfying torturous death for this motherfucker. Or something to satiate the overwhelming rage and injustice. Maddie said, I'm assuming this refers to Chu Wanning. He says he does have an affinity for ass whooping rarely seen outside of Southern moms. Accurate. Deeply accurate. Cosmic says, honestly, nothing would have been enough, and that's kind of true. Although at the same time, I had similar feelings about, that one character in The Untamed. And I was indeed delivered a very lovely and satisfying death, both in The Untamed and in Morazusha. I entirely blanked on the name of that for a second. In both of them. So, we had to put up with him first, but then we got the really nice, satisfying, brutal death. So that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm putting in the betting pool. That's on my bingo card. I'm avoiding saying the character name just in case, on the off chance that someone's in here who has not seen the Untamed or read Modazusha. Selfie says, I'm just wondering how much Chu Wanning knows about Mo-Run's past. Outside of, obviously, knowing that he was on the road dying, I would say that he probably, barring some sort of outside influence, someone has told him, what have you, I don't think he knows too terribly much, but you can infer a lot generally speaking, from kid quite literally wasting away on the side of the road. And growing up in a brothel. He does know that. Thank you, Blue. Oh yeah, Love says, I will say I feel no sympathy for Madame Mo. That woman tried to take advantage of a girl for money, and then her son does the same for his personal gain. And this woman gave Mo Run poison to shut him up. No, she needs to die in a fire. The mention of her not always having been like that is like I don't know if that makes her like a full foil, but it's in contrast to Mo Run and everything going on with Mo Run. Because it's making the same point of people who achieve evil are extremely rarely just born evil always that way. That's almost never the case. Something, and actually usually a series of events, comes along that twists them that way. Doesn't mean that I feel bad for her whatsoever, and I wouldn't also love to see her personally ripped apart on the page, please, Meat Bun. That's a secondary request for today. But it was a good opportunity to just slip that little point in. And it also begs a larger discussion about, like, when, at least from a fictional perspective, when that matters to a reader and when it doesn't. Oh yeah, she would have to. I love all the absolutely ripping to shreds of Madame Mo that's happening in the chat right now. Yeah, she. I would. Oh, I can't even. She would need like her own fucking series. But as it stands now, die in a fire. Slowly, please. Could not possibly fucking care less. It's kind of like, it's like that type of, what do you want to call it? It's like, I acknowledge that you were a human before, at some point, before you turned to absolute heinous fuckery. And that there's probably circumstances, even outside of like the one we know about, et cetera, all of that. However, since you've gone down this path of absolute fucking sickening awfulness, why no? I'm not gonna pull my punch. Thank you. No. Ooh, yeah, love. Duan Yuhan was also abandoned, but she never abandoned her dignity. Yeah. Two sides of a coin. And it's always really fascinating to me how it's the variation in people. It's similar, sometimes the same, similar events happening to a person, and one person is great like Duan Yihan and does not lose her dignity. And something similar could happen to somebody else, and then they would just absolutely evolve into a heinous lack of humanity. Oh yeah, Maddie, thank you. I don't understand why some people don't realize you can feel bad for a character's backstory and still hate them and want them to be held accountable for their crimes. Yeah, it's a sort of a nuance, and we all know how the internet doesn't really like that. Henry said, I do like how Meat Bun writes selfish characters' remorse, like Madame Mo and Hua Zui. It makes them more three-dimensional and interesting, rather than, because when you're dealing with such like intense Danmei heightened reality levels of wickedness, it's really easy for it to to get mustache twirly. You know what I mean? It's really easy for it to get a like cartoonish, and there's only so many things you can really do in a project like this to kind of keep it still at least like three-dimensional enough that you can't just write it off as just a flat villain, because that's less interesting. At least it's less interesting to me. And like, I love a good, like, I love Lord of the Rings, like black and white, goodness and all of that. There's certainly a place for that. And actually, in a lot of ways, I grew up with kind of the golden age of that in a way. But I appreciate Meat Bun at least like peppering in bits like that to keep everything super impactful without it getting so over the top that you just kind of check out. Oh, hey, Tuxedo's here. Hey, Tuxedo. Love says the way Meat Bun showed how poverty affects people. Like Jing Shi, who was rich, he thought the starvation thing lasted a year or 6 months, but to Mo Run, who lived through the tragedy, it was only 35 days. The way that Danmei authors are able to really drive in on the effects of poverty on people is like second to none. They're on some other shit. I mean, in general, but they're on some other shit when it comes to tackling in a very, very like granular way the effects of poverty on a person in all manner of situations, and with all manner of people who then become all manner of different types of people. Because I mean, hell, just in Morazusha, you have Wei Wuxian, and I always think of crazy hot guy before I think of his actual name, Shui Young. And like, I hadn't seen until Danmei, I hadn't seen people really dissect unflinchingly the really, really heinous aspects of poverty. Not like that. We have this really awful tendency in America to kind of gloss over how horrifying poverty is. It's not brought into the forefront very much. My mom's perception of shelters, you don't want to know. The earthworms, thank you. Selfie and love. The earthworms. Because she worked in a fucked up phrase. She was how he was going to help his saviors. It was a direct correlation to Chu Ning, but what was the specific phrase? It was, yeah, he didn't want, yeah, Cosmic. He didn't want to eat his saviors anymore, but he was going to help his saviors rescue, no, I'm going to repay saviors. It was something that, you know, connected back to Chuaning and finding him on the side of the road. Honor the worms as his saviors, Maria. I believe that was it. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Oh my god, E! First of all, hi. Oh my god, E, you're right. He later was helping Earthworms, and that's when Chuaning took him on as a disciple. Meatbun said, "No, I'm committed to Motifs, thank you." Yeah, Selfie, who said the Earthworm saved him twice. You're not wrong. You're not fucking wrong. Which, yes, Liv, which then reminds me immediately of Chuaning and the fish. And like, what a curious thing. What a curious connection that just makes you go, soulmates. And yet, that is absolutely one of those things that really made me just even more endeared to them. Because, like, there are so many ways, obviously, in which they, you know, connect in really beautiful, romantic, tragic, difficult ways, given everything about them that we know that they've been through. So to have something that's like endearing and a bit wholesome to connect them with, it's like I said, you know, Meat Bun apologizes sometimes. She's like, here, have something nice. And she does give you something genuinely nice and wonderful every now and then. Liv. I see you. Don't think I don't. Oh yeah. Selfie. What I find most funny about that about the suicidal fish is that Chuaning and Moran didn't even eat them. Nope. That entire moment. Is there art? Have we talked about this? Is there art of that moment? I almost have to jump over to the next stream, but is there art for that? I need art. I need fan art for this. Right now, immediately. Of Chuaning and the fish. Please. For my soul. It should be somewhere. Somebody somewhere. Please. I need it desperately. I don't need to answer you, Liv. You know what you did. It's just a few minutes before 3, so I need to hop on over to the reading stream where we can maybe, I don't know, find out exactly how Morun killed this dude or how this dude died, how he wound up on Seasheng Peak. Something like that. I'm sure it will be absolutely fucking devastating. And I get to go into it without any lemonade. Once again. So, tune in a couple minutes when we start reading. What the fuck chapter are we reading? 262. Called Curtain Call. That's promising. I'll see you guys over there in just a few minutes. Thank you for chatting with me today, as scattered as I was there at the beginning. And I will see you guys next Tuesday for whatever the fuck we're about to read. Alrighty? I'll be over there in just a few minutes.